though. I can talk to her like that.
Yeah, she does. We can't tell her sometimes I saw me just sit down and just.
Oh, whatever.
Give her the look.
Whatever. Okay. So we're going to move on and continue on with our close reading and talk about speaking and listening. So think about some text-based discussions your students have engaged in this year. So what makes the discussion successful or made this discussion successful, and what made it unsuccessful? So on page 45 in your note picture, you have a spot to write down. Yeah. So what makes a discussion successful or unsuccessful? All right, so what are some things that might make a discussion successful?
All of my kids talked, because they didn't talk 3 times, and they got a 0 out of 30, and they didn't want 0 out of 30. You had to move the conversation along. You couldn't just say, oh yeah, I agree. Good point. That does not count. You had to move the conversation forward so everybody talks. I feel like the talk moves.
Yeah. Anyone else?
Having the text or recalling what they asked.
So bringing their conversation back to the text. What about unsuccessful? What would make a classroom discussion unsuccessful?
Silence.
Silence.
People talking.
Yeah. What about arguments? Like when you have them like fighting with each other over stuff, and y'all have any of that? Not violent.
No, I mean, not
No,
like,
but
like they respectfully
Okay,
disagree with each
yeah,
other.
because I know sometimes that's an issue. Like people will say, well, and I guess we've been doing more of this in ELA anyway, so it's not as much of an issue now, but yeah. All right. So our session objectives for today are to identify characteristics of a high-quality classroom conversation. Then we're going to look at the 5 steps in preparing for classroom conversations that are productive. And then explaining how effectively planning classroom conversations can increase your students' understanding of the text, as well as their ability to communicate that understanding. So, this is our agenda. You can look over it. All right, so let's start by examining a classroom conversation case study. This case study features an 8th grade classroom that has just finished a 3-day study of the Prometheus text and is now engaging in classroom conversation. So you're going to examine this conversation case study, look for effective teacher actions and effective student actions. And then after you've done that, you're going to discuss at your table what is effective about this classroom conversation. So on page 46, I'm going to give you about 5 minutes to read. And I'm going to go ahead and tell you, you might want to open up your binder and pull this case study out because we're going to be referring back to it a lot during this session. So you might want to just go ahead and get it out. So I'm gonna give you about 5 minutes to read, and then you're gonna have about 3 minutes for discussion within your groups. I'll let you know when it's time to begin discussing. So on page 46, we're looking at a case study, and we're talking about effective classroom discussions. So you know for effective interactions, effective student actions, and then be able to discuss what's effective about it.
Are you saying that to me? Or
Like most of you are getting kind of towards the end. So once you finish reading at each of your table groups, you'll just discuss what is effective about this classroom conversation, about the student actions and the teacher actions we will discuss.
I don't see it, it would be flowing, it kept flowing.
The teacher takes them out.
Put their conversations into the discussion.
Follow-up questions or two. Just can anyone add to Janice's idea of what she says? You say more about that. Let's be more specific, what are we looking for? What do we want them to say about, we want them, are we looking for text evidence at this point or a different idea? So,
I have them back in the beginning, so like adding, and it's a student, and, but she kept
Say more about that.
she really didn't love
I will
kind of
review
narrowed
it.
it down.
I won't simply say, tell me more, say, why do you think, what evidence is there? So, I mean, I'm fishing for specifics, I don't wanna
I
give
don't
them
let
a
them,
broad
I don't.
brush with myself.
You just like, they just know every time they get the group, they use it.
And our lessons, every time they ask for conversations, when they need it, we got them float in front of our notebook.
As long as they're having at least demonstrate.
There were those points where she did ask for evidence, which was good.
So,
We see that in
just-
text.
So, like, this is not the whole, script for the whole lesson either, the whole discussion. So this is just a clip of probably 5 minutes.
But I also like how the teacher,
About that
if
too.
they
And
to go back and underline and take everybody, so like everybody had the same,
At the beginning, the very
even
end,
though they weren't
quite possibly at the beginning
discussing
of
at
the
the
year.
time, everybody had to go through and underline or put checks or whatever she's going to do.
They might not have been ready for that one.
So it got to the point where later on, they're gonna be doing this independently, they'll have the same information. Sort of like how our
Yeah,
special
so,
ed,
We're not even meet yet.
so, and that's the thing, this is just a conversation, so the teacher can, it's not a great grammar, the teacher just like.
and we all go through and
It's not,
highlight the same thing. So they'll have that information.
Yeah, the official, always gonna leave that outside. So it's not the official either, so it's not, the
I
teacher
would
is
not
not
know
involved
this
in this.
I don't know about
She is gonna ask.
They didn't think they
I
needed
feel
it.
like we should lay the foundation, summarize what's going on. That was,
They move ahead and they don't, they haven't gotten.
especially
Have
at
them already
the
read.
beginning of the week or something.
So I'm talking about all of
Separate
it,
questions,
Trinity,
they weren't so
you
far.
didn't worry.
Anything that still question we pulled out.
Yeah.
Probably everybody.
Yeah,
Yes.
The summary has a portion they didn't want to do. They did all.
Yeah, so they're reviewing a little bit, yeah.
Dr. Stuckins.
All right, so we know that high quality conversations do not happen overnight. Now, this one, there were some strong and some weak points. Like the stems were not brought out until after they had been discussing for probably 5 minutes. And you probably want to bring those out beforehand. The teacher did give a lot of direction, but we also don't know as far as like the context of this classroom. We do know that this is only the 4th lesson for this unit, so we don't know what point of the year, what time of the year she did this. This could have been her first unit. So we really aren't sure about that. So there are certainly things that we don't understand about this whole conversation, but we can say that it is, I mean, it's a decent conversation. You have students, you know, talking to each other, you have them answering the question, you have them adding on, the teachers asking for evidence in a couple of places. So, you know, it's a decent one. And it's also only just the beginning of their conversation. They do go on to talk more. But we know that we can start small with these conversations because all of these things don't happen overnight. There are many things that go into high quality classroom conversations. So it takes time and meaningful practice and feedback from you for your students to grow. So they aren't going to be able to go into a classroom conversation like a Socratic seminar or a fishbowl where the teacher's not doing anything. They're not going to be able to do that at the beginning of the year. You're going to have to lead them and teach them how to do all of these things and then kind of step back. So, but then opportunities for all of these things are built into the guidebooks already. So, you know, as long as you're following and you're doing these opportunities, then it'll help you outline and take the steps you need to prepare your students for these conversations. So speaking of that, how do we prepare our students for conversations? So we have the Guidebooks Classroom Conversation Guide. It's in your note catcher, but I've kind of got like a little summary up here. Well, not really a summary. I just got like a one little the 5 steps. So this conversation guide outlines the 5 steps, but then it goes into deeper, it goes into more detail about each step in the actual guide. So what I want you to do on page 49 is just independently review these 5 steps. And then what is included in these 5 steps. So you're gonna have to turn, it's a little bit longer. You don't have to read like, you can just kind of skim and scan, just look and see what's included. We're gonna explore them in depth and examine them throughout everything, so just skim and scan through them. I'll give you about 2 minutes. All right, so like I said, we're going to go into a lot of detail and we're going to break apart each one of these steps. So step 1 is to know the text. So you have to ensure that you have a deep understanding of the text or topic under discussion and the student book board. If you don't know the text, you're not going to be able to help guide that discussion. I mean, that's just plain and simple. So you should read all of your text before you even teach the units. You shouldn't go into the classroom not writing, even if it's an article that they're reading that day. You shouldn't go into the classroom without having read it, because you won't know how to guide their discussion. This is a critical step. So when you have internalized the big ideas of the text and you know the ideal student responses, you can think on your feet when a student gives a response that's not quite there and redirect them or scaffold as needed. So on page 52, you have, the student look for. So I want you to start by reviewing the student look for provided by the guidebooks for those discussion questions that we just looked at. And then, or that they were discussing in the guidebook, in that case study. I'll give you about 2 minutes just to look. Okay, I'll get it to you. It probably just copied on. I've got extra. All right. So, and after you've reviewed these student look for, summarize what are the key understandings students should demonstrate in this conversation. So, what are the key understandings students should demonstrate in this conversation?
Characterization.
Yes.
What type of support and characterization?
What else? exactly. So we're looking at that, all that characterization, for the two main characters, right? So now go back to the case study. I told y'all you might want to pull that out with all 5 of these steps. Go back to the case study and discuss with the partner, how does this teacher demonstrate deep understanding of the text? So how can you tell that the teacher, not the students, the teacher understands this text? And how does the teacher support students in demonstrating an understanding of the text? So go back to that case study that was on page 46 through 47, 48. I think it was on the back of 48. I was on the top of 48. So go through it with a partner and just try to find places where you can see that the teacher has a deep understanding of the text and the teacher supports her students in having a deep understanding of the text.
Yeah.
You know, is where that quote is found, it's, up at page 2, y'all go back and underline that.
She reaffirmed that, yes, oh, so you think that you're afraid of what might happen when you sometimes? So like she adds to the student, before another student can.
It's actually.
I don't think I want to get
And ask them for evidence. Why is he scared? What is he scared of?
And
So you're trying for that rather than for maybe answer. So.
Or like, she says, which kind of guides them, and let's do
All right, so, will you share what you said about the Jasmine thing? That was in my
Yes,
report.
Okay, on 46, whenever that kid Jasmine says, I think Jupiter doesn't want to give them fire because he's scared, the teacher comes in right after that and she kind of reaffirms what Jasmine says, but she responds with, so you think that Jupiter's afraid of what might happen if humans get fired? So she kind of adds to Jasmine's initial thought before someone else can mess that train up, because she's guiding them there. We didn't like that, but it's not bad. And then she asks if anyone can add to it. So like after she's, make sure that they're headed on the right course, then she's like, now add to it.
Yeah. Anyone else want to share what they found? Where can you see that the teacher has that deep understanding of the text? Or maybe it might be like an overlap, that she understands the text and she's supporting the students at like the same time.
The very beginning, she says we've read it several times.
Okay. So she's read it, right? What else?
And then, when she's like, it seemed like you really done some good thinking about why he might not want humans to have power and what this reveals about his character.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're going to do some similar thinking, and then she tells him how to grow,
Okay.
how to get into what, she tells him what to do.
Anyone else?
Just the questions she asks.
Exactly.
She asks, what does Jupiter's refusal to give humans fire reveal about his character? And then has them discuss that. And like April says, well, I think it shows they're worried and not confident. She's like, well, can you build on that, Josh? Like the partner.
Yeah.
So. Because if she didn't have the knowledge, she wouldn't do it.
Yeah. All right, so step 2 is to create an environment which supports all students engaging in productive conversations. So, and the key word in that is all students. So this is our environment. Before we dig in, what does this mean to you? What does this explanation up here mean to you?
Everybody is involved.
Okay.
Like they feel safe, giving them.
They feel safe.
It builds their confidence.
Okay.
Being careful that not just a couple of people dominate the conversation, right? That you're
Right.
paying attention to those who are not.
And you're asking students, and I'm kind of wondering, which I'm just gonna, never mind, I'm making quiet because y'all might find this. We'll talk about it in just a minute when we discuss this. So, how would you know when you've achieved this type of supportive environment?
Kids talk.
Kids talk. You have those kids that usually do not talk, speaking out. We were in a classroom, and I think that's when we went around when we went around for the circle walkthroughs, and we were in a classroom, and it was a student. I mean, I had taught him in 3rd grade, and I had taught him in 6th grade, and it was like pulling teeth to get him to talk. He was in this classroom, and he just volunteered and started talking, and we were like, what? And it was on topic too. We're like,
Honey.
what?
Wow.
Like, oh my goodness. So, I mean, that type of environment. All right, so, what I want you to do, hold on. Okay, so it's important to point out, this isn't a one-time step. It's ongoing process throughout the year to build this type of environment. Some considerations, like when you're doing student groupings, because a lot of times you might have them grouped together. Some considerations are their content and background knowledge, social skills, reading ability, language proficiency, and then you might have structures that you want to include, like have them talk with partners, because sometimes those students will feel more comfortable talking with a partner rather than in a whole group setting. Small groups, expert or jigsaw groups, and then self-selected groups. And of course, there are more different types of structures.
Enter your pagan training.
Yes. So this is what, yes, definitely. And we're going to talk a little bit about balancing. So when you are forming heterogeneous groups, there are 2 important things to consider: balance and accountability. When you're grouping students, you do not want to group the most talkative student with the least talkative student, because it's going to be a one-sided conversation. And likewise, you don't want to group your highest ranked student with your lowest ranked student, because the highest student is going to get frustrated because the lower student doesn't understand. The lower student is going to get frustrated because they don't know what the higher student understands. So I used to do this actually whenever I did, when I taught elementary and we did small groups and centers, like I would rank them from 1 to whatever. So let's say we have 24 students. You'd rank them from 1 to 24, and your ranking might change according to like whatever the skill is or the story, because some students, their background knowledge is higher, so they're going to understand more and be able to produce more conversation. But so 1 to 24. So I would rank, and I would partner up if I'm going to give them partners, and I want to assign the partners. I would put number 1 with number 12, and then number 2 would be with number 13. So I'm going to split it in half and take my highest of each group and put them in. So number 12 would be with number 24. So they're closer. It's not as big of a gap. You understand what I'm saying about that?
Intimidated.
Yeah, they're less intimidated or they get less frustrated. So now, what we're going to do, that was just a little snip of the grouping part of it. Now this case study, it starts out, most of everything that we see is all whole group, or pretty much, and they're about to go into groups, I think is what it said, or I don't know. But so what I want you to do now is to just discuss with a partner. What evidence do you see of a supportive environment, and how are students grouped in this discussion?
I'm going to ask you to get your 4-person.
4-person groups, yeah, at the end. I knew it was something.
That's where they do that
Shoulder
partner.
Okay, yeah. I knew there was something where they got into. Do they?
Yeah.
Okay. I knew that there was some.
and each other's
So,
ideas.
yeah,
rather
they
than
did
just-
on hold
Mhm.
in the beginning.
And she's purposely.
Yeah, I'm like,
So
so that's how
great.
they're getting to make sure that like, everybody is participating, like, I know we're gonna do board, you know, you're not gonna tell everybody, you're gonna change the list, you're gonna make them. But then, like, you might not get what you want if you're forced to look at yours.
Especially if it's a class
Yes.
with the small
So
classes.
it might be, yeah, so you would start out like that, and then you went into smaller groups and then volunteers.
And I understand why she didn't do conversations down.
Well, because they were with partners.
Because this was two,
Yeah.
and you're going to four, it's way more to.
And now I'm doing conversations.
Right. Conversation has that maybe go over more instead of just two.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so they're like,
So then,
So this may be a good time.
Like how she's
been.
when she bought in the groups of two, though she made both of them.
And now.
She said it just one, because a lot of times you'll have the group speak, or someone
That's what they were
assigned to speak for the group.
Yeah.
See, I still understood what earlier, because kids didn't participate, or that needed to participate in this. That's why I thought they should go, but I definitely see they're more
Understand why.
necessary.
Yeah.
So how are students grouped in this discussion? We see quite a few different groupings. What do we see first?
whole group.
Whole group, and then
Shoulder
shoulder partners, and the four groups. What type, it says four partner, but what did it say? Did it say, just a 4-person group? It didn't say head voting, is there anything?
But the
Okay.
conversation stems are, it's like the purpose for them to associate that with their discussion.
Yeah. So they're able to guide. Now, I was thinking, like, at the beginning, you know, when she was asking for other students to add on, what went through my mind was maybe that was just her way of getting more students involved. Those students that she knew could find evidence, but, you know, could have come up with the answer. You know what I mean? It might have just been, I don't know, but it might have just been her way of getting more students involved in the conversation, because she knew that they'd be, you know, they were about to break off and do other types of groupings. All right, so step 3 is to establish norms or consistent norms and procedures for conversations. All right, so
She said we should review our conversation norms before discussing the next question.
yeah, so go back and look and see what norms and procedures are evident in this case study and be specific. So find them and highlight them or underline them.
When you finish discussing, respond in writing the first 2 questions on the discussion question sheet I gave you earlier.
Well, it seems clear that she starts with summaries very often because they just not answer the questions. So, the methodology, the approach, seems to have some consistency to it. But similarly, the way she helps from group to pairs to 4 seems to be a common.
This isn't the first
So-
time they've been asked to talk to their partner.
Exactly. So at the beginning, she does ask if everybody has their copy of their text. So they all have to come, right, ready, prepared with their text. What else? What are some other norms that are stated?
They're aware of the conversations beyond the slide. To be posted or that copy or just whatever.
Anyone else?
There, here where she says, everyone take them and underline the line. This is probably not the first time that they've done that, so they're prepared that in their text, they're going to be marking it up. Yeah, she can be explicit about where.
All right. So they all, I'm pretty sure that they have to be, you know, at the end, she talks about what? The review our conversation norms. So she's got them posted somewhere, you know, or be sure to review them. All right. So we're going to actually watch a video. Oh, I didn't talk about procedures. Procedures would be like cold calling, making them elaborate on others' ideas, That would be the conversation stems also, citing text evidence, underlining and annotating text, those types of things. So we're going to watch a video. And as we watch this video, there is a notes place on page 54 in your note catcher to write down some ideas for these look fors. So you're going to be looking for what norms and procedures are evident in this lesson, and how does the teacher hold students accountable to meeting these expectations. They couldn't just add it. Participation protocol. Yeah. So this is a 6th grade classroom, and we're just going to watch this really quickly and write down the answer. Remember, what norms and procedures are evident, and how does the teacher hold the students accountable for meeting these expectations?
So we are going to engage in some academic discourse, and we're going to do a couple of things that are the same that we've been doing all year long and that we've been working on all year long, and I'm going to add kind of a couple of new elements. So with 6th graders, it's like you kind of have to tell them where to put their body parts almost, right? Because they're kind of like all over the place, and so I want to make sure that in this moment, you're going to look like a scholar, and here's how you're going to do that. What I'm going to do is give you 5 pieces of criteria. I'm going to call this what's called a participation protocol. And we talk about the 4 L's of academic discourse. Look at your partner, lean towards your partner, lower your voice, and listen attentively. And then I added another layer, which is using evidence or examples. And so what I'm going to do is when I come around and I'm listening, I'm going to...
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Look for all of these things, and if I see, okay, Emmanuel's looking at his partner, I'm going to check it off. Okay, if he's leaning in, check it off. If he's talking kind of loud, I might miss that one. Okay, if he's listening well, I'm going to do that. Of course, I'm not going to be able to mark every single person's every little box, but I kind of want to see how many of these we can fill up today. You know, in academic discourse, it's super easy if I say, okay, you know, discuss with your partner. A lot of middle schoolers will say, okay, what happened at lunch today? You know, so it's just a way for them to just have structure to what I'm asking them to do.
Because it wasn't very fair that Lily was shot. She should go to the rally because she might get something bad might happen to her because police might try to take it to the black man but makes him do to her. They know that they're just naive and they don't go to the real world.
The other piece is scribing. Walking around and listening in on a couple of paired discussions and writing down what students say. And then I'm going to put it up on the Elmo for everybody to see. It gives a voice to the students and they see, oh, my name's up there. I got on the piece of paper. I got on the board. And now their ideas are public, right? First it was with one other partner and now it's made public to 31 other students in the classroom. Here are some of the things that I heard. And then at any point, if you want to expand, maybe you have a question to bring this back. And so let's gather our ideas right now, okay? It's an accountability piece, making sure that they're staying on point. I can really tell that you guys are listening. And the way that I can tell that is you're giving a lot of eye contact, right? And you're using other people's names to show, okay, I'm listening. And then you say, I agree, I disagree, I'd like to add on to, right? Very, very nice.
All right, so I'm going to give you about 1 more minute. You can write down anything you need to for that video. I'm not going to say anything you need to after Jesse's comment.
Don't shave your heads and get nose rings.
Anyway.
I was thinking about shaving mine.
Jesse can shave his head.
No, you just don't get a nose ring.
I haven't had hair since.
Fits me.
Liar, I saw people.
I haven't had long since.
All right, so at your tables, I want you to discuss these two questions. What norms and procedures are evident in this lesson? And how does the teacher hold students accountable to meeting these expectations?
She said, let's see, make sure how, and then she like puts it up on the board. And she says, let's see. Not just one person. She's also on.
Those engagement expectations, they're absolute expectations, that they're used to.
She doesn't just say discuss it.
Accountability on the checklist, unless she said much when she walked. But the other can put it up for everybody to see.
I'm just not support of, listen,
But were they lower your voice?
Listen, lean in, lower your voice.
It's kind of like subversion slant. Set up, lean forward, attentive listening, remember all the. Not your.
It's look, lean, lower voice, listen attentively.
listen, lower voice, leaning.
Yeah.
Listen, lower voice, and listen.
Yeah.
Up and moving.
No, yeah, as long as they do it.
All right, so, moving on to step 4. Step 4 is identify the purpose of and provide guiding questions for each conversation. So what does this mean? When planning a conversation, it's important to identify the purpose of the conversation and its connection to the unit focus or the unit, the text under the study. So we want to think about the whole, like how is this going to get our students to the end? So once you have that clear purpose established, you then use the resources available to you in the guidebook. So like the teaching points and the student look fors, to think about those questions and how that you can ask to support your students. All right, so now we're gonna go back to the case study. So with a partner, look through the case study and try to determine what the purpose of the case study was. So what was the purpose of this conversation? And how did those guiding questions help support that purpose? And so the guiding questions are like the big questions.
Which, okay, Sandra, what do you say?
Yeah, case studies.
Character analysis.
You also, yeah, that's still page 46, and you don't have it pulled out.
Okay.
Any character analysis for but they're also using those skills to encourage, interpret, to practice facial evidence.
What is your question?
The overall purpose.
What was the purpose of the conversation?
All right.
And how did the guiding questions help support that purpose? So what was the purpose of this whole conversation? And then the guiding questions that the teacher asked, how did that help support the purpose?
The questions you could go up
What did the teacher want the students to know by the end of it, right?
So.
She wanted them to be able to what?
Yeah.
I think it's just gonna be.
She's beginning to distribute information to giving time with you about she's
She's just beginning to dig into the. Because the end of the group.
And then they're going to take on the next character previous on their own. She's kind of, everyone's smart. She said the time, this is how this is going to work. And we do this.
And guiding how the discussion should go in their small groups. So what was the purpose of the conversation? With characters. Characterization, right? So how did the guiding questions help support the purpose for them to understand the characters and their motivations?
Directed their thinking a little bit, what they're thinking about the character, what angles, provide some sort of guardrails to keep them on task and yet.
Yeah. So it kind of chunks it, right?
I'm sure they understood, and she understood it originally, but yet, first you wanted to summarize so they actually understood it and then pointed them towards the character analysis.
And so they didn't reread the text that day. It looks like they just came into the discussion with their text. We've read it previously, so they read it for 3 days. So let's summarize it to recap and remember, and then we're gonna go into our discussion.
But then the discussion went back to the text.
Yes.
And then they underlined, and so the text was there and they were going back, but they weren't sitting down and reading.
Right.
And as they were giving her ideas, she's like, okay, we're going to chart. So they were able to see everyone's thoughts as she was referring them to capture it.
Right, and then now to step 5. The last one is to use talk moves to guide the conversation. So, teachers can keep a conversation moving in a productive manner by using talk moves. So engaging in productive classroom conversations can help students develop more complex thoughts and reveal their misunderstandings. These conversations are an opportunity for us to keep track of and to guide student learning. As students reveal their misunderstandings, it's important to help them revise their thinking. So having illogical conversations or conversations about inaccurate content could harm students rather than support their learning. Now, this is a talk moves. I know y'all have all seen like student talk moves. This handout on page 55 is actually the teacher talk moves. So this is what you're going to do in these classroom discussions. These would be the prompts that you would use to help guide a conversation. So that's on page 55. So I'm going to give you a few minutes to review these talk moves and then summarize what are talk moves and what purpose do they serve.
Put your shoes on.
All right, so what are talk moves? Y'all discuss at your table. What are talk moves and what purpose do they serve?
Guiding questions, advance conversation.
And then like also like that's in like you think what's your goal?
She did that.
Or are you wanting them to be able to, just depending on what the question is, like if you're wanting to provide evidence, well, this is what I would need to ask.
Without saying too much.
Right, that gives me more information.
The teachers trying to remain neutral.
I think I'm like this.
But allowing them to think.
Because I hate to
They're
say
not-
it.
It's just my conversation.
Yeah.
Which is what a lot of times unconfused teachers do. We know it all, and we want to tell them everything we know.
There you go. Let me just read these student reports because they didn't quite get it. Instead of asking questions, they got confused.
I'll tell you, I don't interrupt you, but figure it out on their own.
Give me a little more.
Yeah, like she said,
They're gonna be rounding them to the different
question.
He said.
We're,
Is
first
that-
said
is that
yes,
right?
They're
not quite right.
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 Without saying, you know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
So we don't have to say it, it was
Yeah.
her directly. go deeper, then they may change.
Yeah.
And then we can
Yeah, and because as they start processing and saying it out loud, then they change their
thoughts, their original thoughts.
So now let's go back to our case study and see where we are as far as evidence, or see where we find evidence of step 5. So specifically, which talk moves did the teachers use in this discussion? And I found one example from the study. And what do you think the intended purpose of that talk move was, and what impact did it have on their discussion? So those questions are on the board. So that I just asked.
At the beginning.
Yeah.
Like the go-to, like I heard you say or whatever, like she restated what they were saying.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that they just, that's what the kids need. They need you to reflect.
So
what they're
if you're
saying.
restating if you restate what they say, what would the goal be for that? What would the purpose be? Like, look at the talk move. What's the purpose
Affirm
of that?
understanding. Affirm that you're understanding what they're saying, and communicating what they want to say clearly.
It says the goal would be students listen carefully and clearly understand others' ideas presented in writing or speaking.
Right.
So you're also trying to figure out, is that really what they're saying? Or maybe if they hear it back, they might be like, well, maybe that's not quite right. Or somebody might say, oh, and then add on to it.
And this is, it reminds me of active listening.
Yeah.
Where
That
you're-
part is,
You're actually
yeah.
listening to what they're saying and processing and then paraphrasing it back to make sure that y'all are on the same.
Definitely.
Or when I hear it, they might
You do
say,
it first year.
change it, like tweak it.
I hear you saying.
Yeah. All right, so what was one example from the case study that y'all found? Somebody give me an example besides that one.
Sorry, go ahead. Well, she tells Brian that was an interesting idea and asked what evidence does he have to support it.
Okay,
So that is where it says, goal 3, students provide evidence and explanation to support their claims.
She asked Joshua to unpack more of what his partner said.
all right, so now, before we wrap up, we have to summarize and capture our learning. So just take a few minutes to review and reflect on these 3 questions, and record the responses on page 56 in your note capture.
Is that scheduling?
Yes.
Especially when it's messed on there.
Give you about 2 more minutes and keep this. And we're gonna move on to our last module. Last session for module 3. And then that'll be it for today. Unless you want to stay and plan.
Okay.
We're gonna plan some anyway.
Oh, absolutely.
No, I mean like during this.
Oh, really?
That's fine.
I think I couldn't, it wouldn't stay on that thing.
All right, so on page 57 in your note catcher, you have your do now. When you teach a lesson, how do you know? Do what?
No.
Oh, okay. How do you know that students have achieved the goals you set? And what types of evidence of student learning, like assessments, writing pieces, work samples, do you find most helpful in measuring student progress? I mean, if they're like, yeah. They don't have. Anybody want to share? So, how do you know that students have achieved the goals you set? Exit tickets. What else did you say?
The look on their face.
Sometimes you can kind of tell just by the way they look, right? Their body language. But what else?
They can accurately formulate answers and support them with text evidence.
Okay. So how would you know, how do you keep track? I'm just asking, how do you keep track that they've accurately done that?
I like discussion and writing, so when you get a kid discussing, you actually see where their mind's going.
Okay.
So I like to get a lot of discussion going on what we're talking about.
Do you use a rubric or anything? Just wondering.
It depends. If it's a more formal discussion, I will.
Yeah.
If it's a little more informal, I just kind of feel it out a little bit. I'm just trying to gauge where they're at.
Okay. So what types of evidence of student learning do you find most helpful in measuring their progress? Okay, so maybe like a progression of their from the beginning of the unit to the end. What else?
I plan to, probably towards the end of next year, like assigning small groups and having them teach a lesson. Because if they can teach it, then they know it.
Would y'all rather have like formative assessments or summative, or or those? Which one do you like better? Not really summative, but like, yeah.
So I'm teaching the juniors, and I know they face the work keys and ACT, so for me, it's very important that I prepare them to take those type of tests.
Yeah.
So just little, I don't know, it's kind of like, I'll do this. It's very important to do that, but
You're gonna have more
Okay.
added on,
Yeah.
definitely.
does that make sense?
Yeah. All right. So our objectives for today are to explain the process and purpose of the inquiry cycle, understand the characteristics of actionable evidence of student learning, and begin the inquiry cycle. So you're going to create a plan for leading discussion and collecting evidence of student learning. So this is a cycle of inquiry, and this is key to changing our practice. How many times have you been to a PD and you learn new stuff and you go back to your classroom and a month down the road, you forget everything you've learned?
That's happening.
Happen quite often, right? So it's important that with PD and with new things that we learn, we go through this inquiry cycle. So through it, we built in the support system so that you can engage in meaningful problem solving. If the thing you tried isn't working, what can you do to fix it, right? So to state the purpose of the inquiry cycle is very simple. The cycle of inquiry is designed to improve instruction and student learning. So we have already identified teacher and student needs. So we already knew that like pretty much everybody needed some more PD on guidebooks, right? A deeper understanding of guidebooks and why it's designed the way it is and how to teach it, all of that. We've learned our new content, or we're halfway through learning our new content. But we can go out with what we've learned and try it with the kids. So come August, ready or not, we're just a few weeks away, we're going to be trying it with the kids. So this session is designed to help you prepare to teach a lesson. So our cycle of inquiry question is going to be, can my students cite relevant and specific textual evidence to support conclusions drawn from a text? So when you go back into your classroom, of course, this is what we're going to focus on, and basically this is what you're going to do and bring back evidence. So your task is to plan and implement a text-based student discussion in your classroom and to bring back that evidence. So we're going to start this task today. We're going to start with the planning and implementing. Well, not implementing. We're going to start with the planning part of it. We have a number of templates and tools that will help you start making your plan. And the goal is for you to finish planning here so that when you go and you implement your lesson, you can get student evidence to bring back. And then, so then we're gonna go on to collect, bringing back our evidence and discussing the evidence with your peers. So, you know, you can say, well, this is obviously didn't work. What can I do? You can have that discussion, that deep discussion, because a lot of times, you know, you're gonna learn a lot from your peer teachers. Like, I mean, they're like a lifeline
Hey, I'm gonna
sometimes,
be honest
right?
with you, they're smart. You know what I'm saying? No, I know that, that's valuable to me, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. So this doesn't really apply to any of you, except maybe SPED, like how would you do this? You could do this in your class. I mean, you can do what we're doing. So you work with students, just select one of your groups to work with. You can be in the ELA classroom if y'all are going in there, or it can be when they come into your classroom. So let's just move right along. So now that everyone is clear, you're not really clear about the task. So the task is you're going to make a plan. That's your task. So we need to break this task down into steps. So take a moment to review these steps, and then we're going to take a closer look at each one of them. So they're on the board or in your PowerPoint slides. So we're going to select an upcoming lesson from your guidebook unit. Plan out a text-based discussion using 5 steps. Implement this text-based discussion in your classroom and collect the evidence, and then bring your plan and the evidence of student learning to analyze at our next meeting. Yes. So the first one is select an upcoming lesson from your guidebooks. So each guidebook unit contains several opportunities for rich discussions. So you're going to try to choose a lesson that has rich discussion. There may be formal discussion opportunities like a Socratic seminar or a lengthy full class discussion. The lesson might have several text-dependent questions that you could use as a discussion. So depending on your current unit, there are 2 options for getting started. Option 1 is to select an upcoming discussion-based lesson. Option 2 would be to choose a text-dependent question and plan a discussion around it. So I don't know as far as high school is, I don't know how many units y'all are doing or when you're starting. So if you're not starting one of these units, I still suggest that you find at least you can do option 2, because you're going to have a text that you can plan a discussion around, right?
So send me an email so I can get the things I put together.
Do what?
I don't have a connected one, but.
But you can find some type, right?
Oh, yeah.
Okay. So option 2 would be just to find this, choose a text-dependent question from an upcoming lesson plan and plan a discussion around it, which might be what y'all would do. You might would have them like after they leave out of their class, come in and plan around that way and choose a question that you think they need more, help understanding. So, let's go back to break it down. Then we're going to plan out a text-based discussion using 5 steps outlined in the classroom conversations guide. So, we're going to be using these 5 steps, and you're going to have about 40 minutes to get started on this step. The classroom conversations guide is, do y'all have a copy of that in there?
This guidebook 2.0.
Yeah. If you don't, I have an extra printout. So it's that guidebook 2.0. It was back in the previous session. So I have 49. Thank you. So if you need, if you want an extra printout of it, I've also got those up here too. So got it easy if y'all would rather just have them print out. Don't pass them around if you want. So yeah, just find something. So once you've selected the lesson, then you can start planning and using those 5 steps. So really quickly, let's go through and look at the planning template that you're going to use, which is on page 60. So you're going to skip over a couple things in your note catcher because we're going to come back to them. and look at page 60. This is the planning template. So just look through page 60, and then it goes on to page 61, I think, or 62. And then before you get started, and so what's the first thing you must do before you can complete step 1 on this? On your lesson, right? Yeah. You have to find that lesson, all right? So, do what?
She's like, I'll find that.
Wow.
All right, so what questions do you have before you get started? So look through this, and if you have any questions before you get started, ask. You can also ask while you're working, but don't move on just yet. Anyone? All right. So step 3 will be to implement this text-based discussion in your classroom and collect evidence of student learning. So we might have student work, a discussion tracker, student writing exit tickets, and they should align to specific outcomes, be observable, measurable, provide actionable data, and be authentic. But I actually have a copy of this classroom, the evidence collection tool. And just for the purpose of us all having like the same type of tool, I've added you, I think you should all be in the Google Classroom, and it's going to be added to there. Y'all can make a copy of it, type your question in, print it out, let your students work on it, and then you can just bring that back. And if you don't want to use this actual tool for every class, that's fine. You can use it for one class and then just do the conversation with the rest of them too. But it's pretty simple. So look at, flip back, you were on page 60, flip back to page 57, I think, 58. So this is a completed one. It's not blank.
Okay.
So underneath the questions, it has the questions that the students would answer in the discussion. Then it has a spot for their response. And then they have to complete the chart with evidence and how the evidence supports their answer.
How many students how many do you want?
Just bring a class.
Okay,
Like
class
just
set.
one class is all you have to bring. You don't have to bring, but I'm just gonna encourage you to bring a range. You know, don't bring all high, and don't bring all low, don't bring all middle, like have a range. Well, you're gonna have a range.
Yeah.
All right, so what do you notice or wonder about this conversation tool?
For the juniors, I'll probably be doing a case of torture or something along those lines. We'll be doing argumentation. So I'll use the text and have them discuss.
So also on the back, on page 59, it has the blank one, if that's just easier for you to look at. I just wanted you to have both copies, you know?
So this is the one
This is what I have.
that we're bringing back.
I made one part. Did you make that with me?
Just read. It's on here.
You're just gonna have to, like, they have a book that they're gonna have a booklet and they're gonna give you one too, but I can't, like, they've got to be bound for PNG, so I can't get it to you yet. I mean, or you can get the textbook very nice in there. All right, and then the last part will be to bring your plan and the evidence of student learning to analyze back to our next meeting. So that's going to be the actual student work on that collection guide.
Oh, yeah, this is the plan, and then this is, this is the.
Yeah, I'll run that. I need to. Yeah.
So before we get started planning, I want to remind you of the resources that you have available in the guidebooks. The first one is the classroom conversation guide, and it outlines the 5 steps in preparing for a productive text-based discussion. You can also download this document at the Get Started tab of your unit. Then you have the Teacher Talk News, handout, and it has all the different prompts that you can use to guide classroom conversations and to support students in engaging in high-quality discussions. This can be accessed through a link on the Classroom Conversations Guide. And then we have a handout of question stems, which are stems that students can use when engaging in discussions with their peers. Is that in your?
This one.
Yeah, okay, that's what I'm gonna say. That is in, oh, that's behind, so if you need that, that's actually in this packet. This has all three of those things that are on the board. So if you want this, it has the students' stems, it's got all that, so. You have one? Y'all have one? Grab one of those and pass them around. So this resource right here has all three of those. So now it's time to plan. So now it's time to plan. You're going to make a plan for implementing a productive classroom discussion using the provided planning template. So that template that's on page 60 is what you're going to use to plan for the lesson, the classroom discussion lesson. You can go through and look for one that's already planned, or if you're going to be doing, like in high school, if you're going to be doing something a little bit different at the beginning of the year, so before September 10th, you might want to just find something that you're doing and see where you can put in a classroom discussion. So you're going to have about 40 minutes to plan. Oh, I was like, no. Thanks, Hannah. So, well, maybe a little bit on the first. Oh, yeah, there's a copy in the back, yeah.
Because we have to bring this back. Lesson 2. What does Jonas's community value? Chapter 1.
So you usually do one with two different texts at half the classroom, one text, half the classroom.
No, as long as it's a student discussion, it doesn't have to be a whole class discussion, no.
All right.
I mean, this is like they're planning for the discussion too, you know?
Yeah, that's the first.
That's, I mean, I would use it as their planning for a discussion. For them to like have that question in mind, let them plan it out, and then come to the table with their evidence and their claim and all that.
Our lesson 1 was.
I love reading.
Good.
What's the one that has okay. Amber, yes. This is what the printouts look like now, the lesson plans, and it says possible supports during the lesson, and it actually has. I just need to play the audio recording. It gives possible words that you might have to do. So these might be things that you would do before they came in this lesson. So you could already go ahead and go over those words that they're going to have difficulty with, read the text, and let them listen to it too. Yeah. So here's because they added an area where you can pay, and so they want people to pay.
How did I like access some of the text? Like if I go to,
The text access?
yeah,
Yeah, those links are not necessarily the teaching notes, right?
Yeah, well, you have to go to the actual lesson and click original materials. And it'll just give you there's always been videos, we just don't leave.
Yeah, we just flip page notes and listen to, but we have a big discussion at the end.
And you have to go through the releases for that one, because we're going to have to contact with them.
Which is
Lesson 2 is the first discussion.
Basically,
We've got
all this and
you
now
can use, because the first lesson is like connotation and like.
I'm sorry, for the joy of reading and writing. We have a great.
Is that still, is that where it was additional materials?
for this.
This is the text.
Yeah, you can't
But
click
here
through
we
the
just
text
have
access.
You gotta go through the.
If you want the actual book,
Set up like they
that would
do
be a school
structure.
issue, like as far as like purchase.
Yeah, if there's things that need to be purchased, you'll need to tell me.
Yeah.
Purchase them.
So.
I wanted you to see what it's like, we all speak like.
You
need it in the book.
The first lesson usually
Yeah.
is
You just need to have it.
structure, conversation.
Well, no, I got one.
Yeah, she's been, I think she already said she's got some.
Abby is doing whatever we talk about this.
Yeah, I heard tomorrow.
Yes.
I can buy it.
Additional support.
Email me, like an Amazon, you know, and I can get it.
So how did you feel?
What is it?
Just click on it. You might go log in.
Yeah, I'm already in.
This is the first specific.
We'll talk about that more, but I'll be on this week. All right.
It's different, it's different for each class.
I bet you took the ACT right now.
That's your guy, Shirley.
Just go to 64. She should be. She was one of my suggestions. See if she was one of my suggestions. It was a recent issue.
The one, when we go to print something, it's got under the S. What did you say?
It's about 2580.
And if it doesn't come up, I shut it down.
That's what I do on my regular computer. I should know I set it on your days.
The hair. I was submitted. Oh, no. It's just.
You should consider. I mean, yeah, it's just. But the knowledge needs to be that. She was reading outside class.
Yes, I was part of that. You were on campus, that was
She's like that.
Yeah, she.
This is just a stage of this.
This was used conversation.
I'm actually home today. She's walking around, that's how.
Let's do this.
During part 8 of 10, what does Genesis community value? Because there's competition skills and there's lots they can choose from. And there's chapter like rules and emotion is really important. Quality and sameness. I don't think used to feel like this is right, but now that they've redone it. Really? It used to cut off.
This is the extension task.
Lesson 2.
I'll just sit there and play cards.
Up here.
Is that what you wanted? Oh. Yeah, why did she put it on Catherine's?
That's what I'm saying.
That's what
That's exactly what it is.
she said she was in the I thought she was straight on there.
So she was gonna put.
How long did I know that?
See, I should have waited it.
Okay.
Of course, the technical people have it all. Oh, Miss Lindsay, you across the hall from me? Oh, she's always fixing my stuff. Yeah, that's all right.
Because it's opposite here. They go right into it and then they do it. I mean, if they read it, so you let them introduce the word. I know. Because sometimes I'm mad. Not a level. That's okay. I have a school. Is it bad? I'm gonna say. 100% sure. It was a girl. I was thinking about it was in person. Usually we are.
Yes, yes, because that's gonna have what you do and your report on that.
And if y'all want to print here, it's the highest zero, it has 25E.
I don't think you can print from, you have to go to.
No, they're staying, why, interesting.
Check the image. Maybe it's not on. Yes. That's the copy. That's, okay.
Yeah, he's walking.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're waiting to get the competition. Nobody has to get that picture.
Okay, you have about 15 minutes to plan.
Yes, what it shows is community value.
I don't have 2,500.
Yeah. I would do it, chapter 1 of universities of and then the big idea is, the way the community values.
Okay, Courtney, let's get started right here on this.
That's what I'm just now starting out.
Sheet. We're going to do lesson 2.
So what text?
From that thing.
So is this an actual, where they actually have?
The winner, 1934.
Because you're gonna want,
Okay.
is there one that already has, that's what I would look for first. Is there a lesson before September 10th that already has a classroom discussion in it?
And then how they value rules and order
You're not gonna have to,
and
I mean, it should be one per day,
codes, ritual
because
and regulation.
unless they're reading and discussing in the same day, because usually when you do that, especially if it's like the chapters are so long, you can't really discuss in the same day. Moving conversation. So like, I'm feeling take care but that's just gonna be y'all's planning. You're gonna have a planning event, you're just kind of outside of it to see where they're gonna be and then so they're waiting. I would try to find something where they're not like that day.
Okay.
Because you just said how long it would take that.
Only reason I said that, because it says in here, like, all these conversations.
What's the question? What does this poem tell me about the characters? Is that gonna be a strong conversation? So this is that, this is. Let's look at one that has like a.
You have a part of AC,
I don't know my students yet.
yes, she is covered.
Yeah.
So they shoulder,
Children. And then
real. See, we're talking about how it's used to teach about news, goal 1, goal 2, goal 3.
But that would be a good question that makes it off of though. But super weird. But would they be able to answer, like, if you did that, and then you put it all on that? Okay. They're like, that's just a lot. They're under your stuff or something. What lesson is that? And that's pretty early.
So we shouldn't get one super early.
I mean, I wouldn't, because you're trying to establish classroom procedures and everything too. Hey, here's one that it would probably work, because here's claim evidence and reasons, yes. So, even though they have a different, but you could start off with the discussion, and then this was deciding to actually, so how are the characters shaped? Questions, how does mom react to hardships in their environment? It's like show them how to do this. It's like we're doing our part, so we're playing, we're reading, we're evidence. So their claim and their reason are gonna be right here, and this is their evidence, and then you're gonna, this is, see, it has that explanation. So this is the same thing. You can just tell them, like, okay, this is your evidence, and this is your explanation for your evidence. So this would probably, yeah, because it's already. So you're doing this with mom, you're walking over with mom, because it's already in here. So then they, the next one's how to build your daddy reacts. So then they do their own. She actually keeps it, so that's what it has, so they have to all claim the reason. I'm gonna try evidence, and then they have to give how does this help support. That's what our big faults are there. I mean, it's basically, it's basically just giving something for them to write down. Their evidence. You're gonna have to go and look through. I wouldn't even look on this. If I were you, I would go through the students one, which is what they have printed, and look at like the student. Or just, you might have to just do it over and see.
What's it gonna do first?
Well, they're doing this first, but like what lesson she's gonna do it on, because that would probably be the best to support them.
Okay.
Yeah, so you can use that one too. And even if y'all have to, like in one of your times that you're not in the math class, you're not having, like if you have to like go into the class and like with your kids, that you have to do it that way. Yeah. Yeah. Give you about 5 more minutes to plan. So you can actually take the one that I did and then type that in, and then just print it out. Then, If you scan them in, I usually, well, you scan you have to flag the norm was like standard for the English. You said it doesn't tell you the standard for the lesson.
Like their normal
procedure. So I have to flag all.
every single draft.
All you do is write one down and then copy. Go back. I never do that. Probably swing. My birthday.
Yeah, I don't have that whole one.
I never do that anyway, so. Not alright. Yeah.
No, we haven't done that.
This, okay.
Look at the conversations for
This one
Do I go?
out of the
Just copy
spring 1934. Yes. How our guests are that, or how are the characters shaped by the challenges of their environment? Yes. Shape of
Yes, the final figure drama.
So if you save it to your drive, there's actually a link on course when you attach it, like attach on Google Drive. And
We're gonna write these, but then like instead of writing lesson plans, what do you use or not? Or you can save them, and then scan them. Email sort of save the drive. You can just.
you might highlight things that are important for you to say, or you might like annotate like these students, I'm like,
Just like on the notes that they're.
Yeah, right.
Just put, this will be.
Just the norms, like what you're supposed to do to.
It says under all the office.
Oh, we don't know if it scans anyway?
Yeah, so each week you would just go to office and email it.
Works as step 3 and stuff.
Go to copy machine.
Consistent norm.
Send instead of copy. Email it to your email address, and then when you get it, you open it on your computer to save your drive. And then when you go to Encore, rather than typing the lesson plan, just
That you put on that also these conversations down.
until I see where it goes. My thought is, if you're doing this, I'd rather you spend your time getting through and do the teaching notes as opposed to taking it in their form.
I mean, copying and pasting basically goes right through 4, and you really sit down and read it, at least this way we know that like it's been, I thought about it.
Because the students would want to have no adjectives, plain state.
Because I was just on that. Yeah, because you're thinking, you're writing from like,
Last night, and on board the same way, they had their lesson plans that they turned in, but she had a composition notebook. And that's where she planned out every day.
Why did you just write that?
I don't know, we were in the way. What's that?
I don't know why they did that. Right?
all right, so if you didn't finish planning, you can go to lunch and come back and plan. I'm so joking.
You can.
You can, but I just wanted to see what y'all were gonna say. Like, y'all are like, seriously. So let's talk about what's next. So our next step is to go back to our classroom and try this with our kids and collect our evidence. And then we will bring your plan and your evidence to our next meeting on September 10th. We're gonna, in module 4, look through, most of module 4 is spent looking at the student evidence. We're gonna actually dig into it. You're gonna have a rubric to check it by, and learning and discussing what worked and what didn't work and why. And then we're gonna reflect on that, and based on our reflections, we're gonna make a plan to adjust instruction in order to improve learning for all students. So we're also gonna talk about what to do for those few students who didn't meet the objective. So now on page 65 in your note catcher, you have a few questions just to summarize and capture your learning from today's session. Just reflect on these, and then I will see you on September 10th. But some of you I'll see before then, sorry.
Yeah. I don't know, because I just think I'm a cool short.